And this month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by Super Inframan Allison Cook and Eric Hervin. Thank you all so very much for your incredible support.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have as my guest Mr. John Chewter. Hey, John.
Hi there.
And we were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you were telling me this really interesting story that you had been doing a little research on, and I thought it would be make a really cool show. So do you want to tell people a little bit about this?
A little bit about this. Well, it's really based on an African empire called the Maori Empire, and at its largest, some sources say it was as large as North America, the country USA. I've checked that, gone to sources, and no, it's not. It's as big as 2 Texases.
Okay, that's still pretty big.
Oh, it is. It is. Now, the Maori Empire stretches from, if you imagine a map of Africa, it stretches from at its height from the center of, basically underneath the Sahara Desert down to the sea on the left-hand side of Africa.
Okay.
It's pretty large. It encompasses countries like Benin, Ghana, Somalia, goes on and on. Anyway, it was massive, and it was one of 4 very large empires in Africa. Most Europeans, and I presume North Americans, haven't heard of the Maori Empire because it doesn't really line up with the European history markers.
Yeah.
Much. They achieved very high art. If you want to see it, have a look at the Benin bronzes. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, so they were a pretty cultured lot. They spoke their own language. The higher of them and the more religious of them spoke Arabic because they had to read the Quran. So they were fairly bright and switched on and cultured. They did have slaves. Right, so in the beginning of the 1300s, there was a guy called Abu Bakr II. So it's also got a couple of other spellings, and his title was Mansa Musa. Mansa means sultan, or emperor, not emperor. Top guy anyway.
Right.
So his father had greatly expanded the Maori Empire and basically swallowed the bottom third of what became Mali. And they had this wonderful, rich, very productive civilization that smelted and sold very high quality gold and salt. And if you're in a country with no refrigerators, salt is pretty important if you want to keep anything for any length of time. So they made an absolute fortune out of these things. But Abu Bakr, he had a bee in his bonnet that he wanted to see what was at the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. He was, well, generally thought of as nuts.
Yeah.
But he sent out a flotilla, they call it, which actually it's much bigger than a flotilla. It's a couple of hundred ships at least, but they're quite small ships, like 20 feet long, and not huge ocean-going things like we would, probably expect them to use. But these were basically glorified fishing boats.
Okay.
So he sends them out, and he tells them, "Well, you've got to, you can't come back until you've been to the other side, and then come back and tell me, or your food runs out," because they pack these things to the gunnels. So they all set off, and there was a very, very, very long wait, and then one ship out of the 200 comes back. You can imagine that the guy wasn't happy, because if the others, what happened to the rest of them? Well, I'll quote, "Prince, we have navigated for a long time until we saw in the midst of the ocean as if a big river was flowing." Now that's exactly what that North Equatorial Current looks like, apparently, as you approach it, and you can see the water moving at high speed in front of you. It said his boat was the last one, others were ahead of him, and as soon as any of them reached this place, it drowned in the whirlpool and never came out. I sailed backwards to escape the current. But the current, I think the Sultan basically said, "Well, that's BS." And, well, he wasn't having any of it. Now, I think he made the whirlpool bit up, and basically it's like a motorway across. It's quite fast, very fast current, and also the wind's behind you, so you fairly nip along. So, but when you jump on the current, it must be like watching somebody step onto an escalator. All of a sudden, woof, gone sideways. What's that all about? So, I guess it could be scary. So,
yeah.
The Sultan, Abu Bakr, he thought, well, if you want a continent discovering, you better do it yourself. So he decides to kit out another much larger one and sets off. Yeah, and he sets off with his people and a huge number of ships, which I can go in later. And he disappears, abdicates from the throne, and hands it. We get an interesting point. Some sources I'm reading say passed it to his brother, Mansa Musa, which is what we're going to talk about next. One big part of the story is that Mansa Musa. Apparently, sultans were not by inheritance; they were appointed as, pick the best bloke for the job, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then another story said that they picked this guy who wasn't related, so he was either his brother or he wasn't, or actually, if you know any Muslim people, or at all, I mean, I do. I have them living in my block, and they're great folks. But they will refer to other Muslims as brothers.
Right.
So it may be that, somebody didn't understand that when that might explain the two things. So anyway, so he goes off into the west, and he's never seen again. None of them come back, but we'll have a good natter about this, because it would appear there's good evidence that actually one or both of them, of the ones, survived with evidence on the ground. Now, Mansa Musa, annoys me. These names don't trip off the tongue easily. Well, they don't. I mean, all my cheat sheet that I've written here is, most of it is not in any dictionary at all.
Right.
Right. Okay. So Mansa Musa, which is one of his names, he's got at least 4 others. Mansa means Sultan, and Musa is his name, which you see spelled M-O-U-S-A or M-U-S-A or any variant you can think of. Right, so here we go. Let's start up with Bill Gates. What do you reckon he's worth then, Seriah?
His what?
What he's worth, money-wise?
Oh, I have no idea.
$132 billion.
Okay, sounds right.
Well, I checked it today, and annoyingly, Elon Musk has gone up a lot in the last 3 months.
I heard that.
Yeah, right. So he's worth $197 billion. And Bezos has fallen down the tree with a mere $182 billion. Right. By comparison, Mansa Musa was worth $400 billion.
Wow.
Which is twice as high as Musk.
Yeah.
And he's the richest guy in any sort of recent history. So 400 billion. That's his personal worth, not the country's worth, his. Anyway, he was considered to be, well, he didn't handle the slaves very well who were digging the gold out, and he noticed that the gold output was dropping and dropping and dropping, and he went to the area and said, well, what are they doing? And basically they were on a go slow and kind of half strike, yeah. So he did a deal with them, and he said, well, I'll free you if you put your back into it and, do it properly. And they said yes, and that worked. Production went up, they got paid, they had their freedom, they didn't run away, yeah. So, there are lots of kind of nice, humanising stories behind it.
Good.
But what I'm going to talk about now is he had to go on a Hajj, which is, I'm sure most people know, if you're a Muslim, you're expected to turn up in Mecca at least once in your life at a certain time.
Right.
And millions turn up. And it really has upset them that typically old people, when they've retired, like from England, would go on the Hajj then, yeah?
Yeah.
That's typical of what happens. Trouble is, there's an awful lot of ill people in Britain that are in lockdown that have missed their Hajj this year, and they cancelled it even. But nevertheless, it's really massive thing, and they all march round a yard. Anyway, so he decided he was going to go, and he saw it as an entry into the cultured world of Eastern Mediterranean, because although his country was Muslim, they were quite a long way from all the other Muslims. So, anyway, he made his pilgrimage in 1324, 1325. Now, it's reported that he took with him, talk about impressing people, 60,000 men, all wearing brocade and Persian silk, including 12,000 slaves, each of whom carried what's that? Four pound of gold bar, yeah? And also they had heralds dressed in silks, carrying gold staffs, and organised the horses and handled the bags. Now, he also had to take enough food to get all of his people there. It doesn't say to get them back. Maybe he bought that. But he provided all the food for the animals and the people. The animals, he had 80 camels, each carrying between 50 and 300 pounds of gold dust. He gave a lot of gold to the poor as he met on his route. And he did a bit of trading. And he also started building a mosque for every week. Yeah, it is said he built a mosque every Friday. Well, I presume that's completed it. So he's quite an interesting fella. So
yeah.
Anyway, he turns up in Egypt, where Mamluk is the Sultan, and really freaked them out, because if you're in Egypt, and we're not talking about ancient Egypt, we're talking about an Egypt that's been battered, got conquered by Saladin.
Yeah, because this would have been, what time period was this?
1324 to 1325. I think Saladin was dead by then. As the Turkish Muslim Empire, the one that Richard I was fighting, and the Crusades, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That lot were all ruled from the Turkish Caliphate. So Saladin, they were running out of money, and Saladin conquered Egypt. But I think he was dead by then, but that's why the Turkish people were in charge of Egypt, yeah?
Yeah.
So they walk in, 60,000 people. Oh, I forgot. They had I think 100 elephants. That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got all these guys all in bling, yeah, in silk and brocade and that, and they front up. And if I was the Sultan, I'd be crapping myself. Now, then it came to the awkward period where he had to say hello and bow down before the Sultan, because it was expected. Mm-hmm. But Musa wasn't going to bow down. So that might have been a standoff, except Musa, instead of bowing to him, he starts praying to Allah. And the Sultan thought that was a good idea, because it let everybody off the hook, and he prayed to Allah as well, and they became good mates. One of the problems was that Musa had brought all that money for a reason of giving it away. So while he was there, he gave away so much money in, well, Cairo and later Medina and Mecca. So much money into Cairo that it devalued the gold price and the stock market crashed. I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. But on his way back, because it had done so much, giving them so much money and damaged their economy, he borrowed all the gold he could carry from moneylenders in Cairo at great interest, and yeah, he bought it. He bought it in Cairo, so the gold price would rise. That's supposed to be the only time that a single person has altered the stock market in both directions all by himself. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive. Right. Anyway, he went and he did his Hajj, and of course, I don't know if your people know this, but when they are actually at the Hajj in Mecca, everybody wears a uniformly drab, humble garb. Yeah?
Yeah.
So everybody looks the same, yeah? Or is the same before God. And doing that, Musa was mixing with people he would never have seen, like mathematicians, philosophers, poets, yeah?
Yeah.
And he took a lot of those ideas home. Well, that's really all of that I can say, really, except that I keep seeing the same joke about the Alexandria library getting burnt.
Yeah.
And you hear the joke is, I haven't been so sad since I heard that the library in Alexandria, burnt.
Right.
Now, the Muslims, mostly Persian Muslims, took a paper backup. Over hundreds of years, yeah? So all the Greek knowledge of how big the world is and how to do trigonometry and all the stuff that you hear about in the Renaissance in Europe had been lost since the library burnt down. And then, I mean, Alexandria is in northern Egypt, right on the coast. It then got taken over by just about everybody you can think of.
Right.
And all of that knowledge got lost, yeah? Now, the Muslims were making backup copies, and all the stuff you hear, all the stories you've heard of from about, Aristotle, not Alchemy, yes, Archimedes, Galen, all those famous people, and Homer's Iliad, all of that stuff we all know so well now, we've only got because of the Muslim backup.
Yeah. I remember David Hatcher Childress writing about that.
Yeah. Now they not only made a backup copy, they made backup copies of backup copies and placed them around the empire. There's one in Toledo, very close to Madrid, that the Moors put in there, and the Moors were quite open. If you want to come and read the stuff in our library, well, come and read it. That's what it's for. So people did, and a lot of them turned up, and they got all this knowledge, took it back to the UK, and published it. making a lot of money on the way.
Of course.
So, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, so libraries were very important to these guys, but Musa wasn't part of the caliphate. He was, from a different wing of Islam. So after having seen and talked to everybody on his Hajj, he came back and he made a great library, which is still standing and looks fabulous if you look it up on the thing at Timbuktu, which is kind of famous as the terminus for the camel trains. Yeah, they're coming across the desert. But it got this. He built a library and he put 1 million books in it. So,
wow.
I'm not really sure what books means, but books is what he's written. 1 million. And he built it from the ground up. So, presumably, he's had to pay the Persians for a copy, yeah. So, he's got a backup of a backup. So, now they had libraries in, Mecca. Oh, of course, he probably saw the Mecca library.
Oh, right.
So anyway, you can imagine this is I just find all this fascinating. I never knew any of it. Anyway, if we go back to, he didn't do much after that. Yeah, he built his library, and nothing exciting is reported after that. Yeah, and he seemed to have died peacefully.
Quite a lot of stuff, So I guess he gets some time off at the end.
Yeah, well, he's very religious, and no doubt he will have continued doing stuff, but it's not recorded in most of the writing. Most of the stuff we know from this is from the guy taking dictation, at a meeting between him and the Sultan of Egypt. So that's where most of the stuff comes from. Now, we know that at least some of them could read and write Arabic. Otherwise, they couldn't do their readings of the Quran on a Friday, right? So,
right.
But they don't. I can't find any reference to their own writing in their own language. I'm not sure if they had it, but I suppose it would be the same as in England. The only people that could read and write in the time of the Romans were Romans. And they wrote in Latin, so it's about the same. Right. Now, we'll come back to that's his name, Bakir.
And he's the successor?
No. He was his predecessor. You remember? He was the guy that sailed off and vanished.
Right.
Well, I've got a little map which I'll send to Seriah that he can put on the show notes. For those that don't know, at least, the Atlantic Ocean has a very strong current, and for that matter, winds that go round in a circle. They go round clockwise.
Right.
Below the equator, the wind blows anti-clockwise. And there's a very strong current from close to Mali where they can get on either of those winds and currents. You just change your set-off point or, sail into it and get picked up. There appears to be... Now, Christopher Columbus, the Italian who didn't get to America on the first trip, he reports in the Caribbean there were black traders on boats doing trade along the coasts. Mm-hmm. And that's actually in the ship's log of Columbus. That's verifiable. Despite that, the people who write history books say they couldn't have done it. Well, the only problem with taking that express trip over there, which you can do in favourable conditions in, I don't know, it's 100 miles a day, bit more if you got a good wind. If you got too much wind, you have to take your sail down because you'd just be wrecked. But you could get across there in 2 or 3 weeks, possibly even 10 days if everything worked out for you. So it's quite an easy sail. And even recently, in my lifetime, I remember on the news that a couple of fishermen have been blown off the Mali coast, and they had turned up in the Caribbean,
right,
dehydrated, but alive, and this seems to happen about every 20 years. So if you intend to do it, it's easier.
Yeah. You're not going to end up dehydrated.
Yeah, but the only problem with this is that the Brits, and for that matter the Spanish, they knew that you could sail down to the Canary Islands, which is just off the coast of Mali, and you can pick that current and wind that we were talking about, and end up, typically, if you stay on it long enough, just by the Mississippi exit to the Caribbean. And that's one of the theories we did in the last show about how the Welsh became found in, up the higher parts of the Mississippi, Ohio Valley.
Right, yeah.
So we know that you can do that, and the Brits knew that. And the Brits also had been around the hard way over the top in their ships, going around
Greenland,
Newfoundland.
Yeah.
I mean, and they knew that you could get back much quicker because the wind would blow you that way, because we've got a thing called the Gulf Stream that comes out the Gulf of Mexico, and it's a conveyor belt, just like the one we were talking about across the bottom of the Atlantic. It's a conveyor belt that will land you probably on the coast of Ireland.
Right.
So you've got a circular route which you can use, and was used by the slave trade, taking slaves at one leg, and tobacco and other stuff back to England, and then rope and other supplies from England down to what was previously the southern coast of Mali. So they made profit on each leg of it and were driven along by favourable wind and currents. But the problem is, if you don't know how that works, you can go across and you can't get back because you don't know how to. And that's probably why they never came back. Because they only had like 20-foot ships. So, anyway, something else is some interesting things.
Well, you said there was hard evidence that they landed, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Canoes have been found that set off from the coast of Guinea, which is just, probably part of that empire at that time. Canoes, that is. On the island of Hispanola. From the north and southeast came black people with spears, which were made of a metal called guanine, which is 32 parts, 18 of gold, 6 of silver, 8 of copper, which is, in other words, pretty ropey but pretty gold. And when that was brought back for analysis, it is the exact mix of what Maori was digging up.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that came from Columbus's log, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because they can track where certain metals are made by their composition.
Yeah, very easily.
Yeah.
And those came out of the Maori gold mines. I mean, a lot of... If you wanted really yellow gold in Europe, there's only two places really to get your hands on it. One is from the Welsh gold mines, where at one time there was quite an amount extracted. I think there's only one left now, open, tiny mine. The Queen's Crown and so forth and ring and all that stuff is all made of Welsh gold. So they've got to keep finding some, yeah?
Right.
Right. Now this is very yellow, right? And everybody wants yellow for their crowns. So the only other place you can get it, or could get it at that time at least, was there or Mali. Of course, they didn't know it came from Mali because it came up by camel across the Sahara to Morocco. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so they just walk up there. I mean, it's more difficult with a boat because the wind's against you. Yeah, so they would trudge across there and then pick up a load of caked salt from some, dried up lake bed. Yeah, and it was kind of kept secret by the people who were selling the gold where it had come from, because if you're the only guy that they know anyway.
Yeah.
The rest of Southern Europe, or Southern Europe, not Northern Europe, Southern Europe, most of the gold in that came from Mali. There are other gold deposits further north, and like we have in Wales. So, right, the other thing is, you've seen those wonderful icons and like 2D paintings that they did in the Middle Ages that have got gold halos behind them.
Right.
Yeah. And a gold frame. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the church wanted those to be yellow. So that's where an awful lot of the gold went into, still in the churches.
Right.
So quite long distance transport, isn't it, for that time?
Yeah.
Right, what else have we got in the way of... No, it was King John that said that canoes had been found.
Oh, okay.
That were made in Guinea and sailed west with merchandise, he says. That was King John II of Portugal. I've always contended that the Phoenicians, Carthaginians, who are basically the same people, but in two places, they did long distance stuff. They used to sail the full length of the Mediterranean to Britain and barter for whatever they wanted, probably tin and lead and copper and things, and sell us wine and grain, because they have a lot of grain grow. People think that top of Africa is all sand. Well, it isn't. You know, there's a big belt that's grown cereals, so that a lot of cereals came in, as well as olive oil and. Anyway, I've always contended that those guys who could sail anywhere they damn well wanted to, I was pretty sure they'd gone to America. I couldn't see their ships were perfectly capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Their ships were ocean going, and they were bigger than the Mayflower, yeah?
Yep.
By a lot. And it would be really easy for them to go over there. But the Olmecs in Mesoamerica have these big, huge African featured huge skulls.
Yeah.
And the Olmec culture was from 1200 BCE to 400 BCE. And that's right on the money for Phoenicians. So I think they had ships that were capable of doing it, and pictures of, you know, good-looking black guys, and look nothing like American Indians.
Right.
So I think that's eventually gonna prove to be the case.
Yeah. And you also have, you know, evidence of like cocaine from South America and Egyptian mummies and stuff like that. So that there had to be a back and forth there.
Oh, I got some more of those. Bananas, yeah.
The what?
Plantains. Bananas.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
No, bananas, specifically plantains, right? One sort of, are European. And, well, all the way across to India, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But they turn up right on the money of where the second voyage to the Americas is supposed to have landed.
Oh.
European varieties. There was also tobacco growing in Mali.
Huh.
Now, try. I've just thought of this. Try this on for size. If they're growing tobacco in Mali, and they are sending gold and other stuff and trading with Egypt, who's to say there's not a few sacks of tobacco on it?
Right.
Or cocaine.
Yep. I would say those are two things that would definitely be traded.
Yeah. But I don't see any evidence of... I mean, the Egyptians wrote down most things. So you would expect that on, you know, bills of lading and invoices and things, you would find mention of, you know, cocaine and stuff. But you don't, do you? I don't think any of that's found.
Yeah, but who knows how much of a hole we've found, you know? I mean, we've only have certain things from Egypt.
We have an awful lot from Egypt.
Yeah, but we don't know how much, you know, like compared to how much there was, we don't know how much we have.
I just thought of another thing.
Yeah.
Supposing it was illegal.
Ah.
Right? If it's illegal, there wouldn't be a record.
Right.
There's records of the gold. Well, that's rather interesting. We've just invented a whole new fake history point here. Well, go on. I've still got lots of stuff here, but it's not really coming through very coherent. You got any questions and suppositions and things?
Not at the moment. I mean, it's interesting if that there's evidence that they were in South America, definitely. And the second trip went further north, right?
No.
No?
The first trip went north, second trip went to Brazil.
Oh, okay.
One of the people writing on this thinks that sweet corn got to America, which was originally a European, I'm told, lived in Europe first.
Okay.
Interestingly, like where the Phoenicians live and stuff. So,
of course.
Yeah. So, what I'm told is that the modern sweet corn that we all eat today was derived from a hybrid from the New World and the Old World sweet corn.
Ah. Do they know when the hybrid was created?
I don't know. I mean, there are plants that exist in, the Old World and the New World, just because it was around at the time that the continents split, yeah?
Yeah.
Like oak, for example. I mean, you've got more oak over there than we have over here, but ours don't sting us. So, I don't know. If anybody seriously puts a point forward and puts a paper down, it gets trashed within like minutes. You can see it if you go back through a lot of these pages, and blogs and things. Well, it's not for all of the mainstream, but certainly a lot of the mainstream just come in with it's crap.
Right,
but of course, that is how science works, isn't it? So, somebody does something, somebody challenges it, all right, if it's that true, prove it. Oh, bugger, I better prove it. Yeah, goes away and has a think, comes back and says, what about that? Well, I don't believe that either. Oh, I forgot so-and-so. And then he presents it a third time and they go, man's a genius. I mean, that happens quite a lot because that is kind of how science works. Show us real solid evidence, not just an idea.
Right. But you also get stuck in paradigms in science too.
Well, you get stuck in paradigms in anything.
That's true. Yes.
Right. There's now. There's good. I say good. There's evidence of Arabs going to America, and there's a map, Mulan Pi is part of the Americas on the map, but I'm looking at this map and it's really distorted because they didn't really know how the world was, I think. But it's strange. You can easily see England, you can see Norway, Mediterranean, you can see Africa, and then you can see a really large island below Africa.
Right, which is Antarctica.
I hadn't thought of that. I was thinking Australia.
Oh, maybe.
Except it's in the wrong place. Mind you, a lot of the maps in the wrong place. I mean, these people, these academics, they just keep on just looking at this, and they just keep saying Arab ships could not possibly cross the ocean,
Right.
I'm thinking, why not? If you can have a Kontiki raft get across, I can't see.
Well, they said that couldn't happen either.
Yeah, well, that's why they did it.
Yeah.
That got across in pretty good time, by the way, across the Atlantic. The Pacific, I think, took a lot longer than expected.
Yeah, but it's a much bigger body of water, too.
Yeah, but I did say expected.
Yeah.
According to Muslim historian Longword, Aswad sailed over the Atlantic Ocean and discovered a previously unknown land in 889.
Wow.
And returned with a shipload of treasure.
Huh.
Well, there's links to articles. So you've got the Phoenicians, the Arabs, and then you've got the dodgy ones, which are Judaic contact. Now, the Jews had a big scrap with the Romans and fled. This is the Jewish-Roman wars of the 1st and 2nd centuries, and it's called the Bat Creek Inscription. And there's another one called the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone. Officials have decided this is a fake.
Right.
And there are mistakes. And it looks like it's carved by 2 or more novices who overlooked or misunderstood the details of the source of it, from which they copied. And then the biggest clue to it's not real is if you turn it over, it says Eva and Hobey, 13th of March, 1930. Well, that might be if they discovered it or who made it. I think it was a, anthropology student, or 2 of them. There's another one which is even less likely. The place they're supposed to have landed is in the place known today as Recife, which is interesting because you remember my Tale of the Comet?
Yeah.
And doing the lineup of it. Interestingly, it flies straight over that.
Huh.
Mind you, quite a lot later, but and it seems to have been. There are places there that seem to have been basically Mali names,
Yeah.
which have over time become Latinized,
Of course, yeah.
Well, yeah, because you've got Portuguese people living there.
So do you think they just mixed with the locals and kind of created a hybrid culture there?
Well, I don't know. I haven't found anything that says they have. But I'm just saying that if you had a Maori culture up and running and the Portuguese turn up, then, it's like in any country, including America. I mean, people were anglicised names, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely,
Or give them completely different names,
Yeah.
And
on this map you sent, there's like the Black Mojave, Paracues, Black Caribbean, and Black Tribe of Darien, Panama.
Yeah.
So these are all possible places that they may have settled after they came here.
They say they found influence in these places.
Okay.
So they might have been living in one of them and trading with the others,
Yeah.
I don't know. But well, it's difficult to. Oh, I'll tell you something else. This back here guy, he was not liked by the griots, which are the native people that live in Mali.
Mm-hmm.
the apparently when Bakir abdicated, it was considered a very shameful act and not worthy of praise.
Oh.
For that reason, they have refused to sing praise or talk of this great African man.
Huh.
So all we know about them comes from the records in Arabic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we got about 20 minutes left. You said there was a bit more to this story?
Well, I sort of brought in some of those. They were the ones that the Egyptian stuff and the Jewish names and things.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, you've got here, it's another... We're talking about a place, Recife. Its other name is Pernambuco, which we believe is an aberration of the Mandi, which is the name of their language, the Maori people, named for rich gold fields.
Huh.
Unhelpfully, it doesn't tell you what that is.
So was there someone else who took over the Mali? What happened to this large empire?
Well, it's the core of it is still there.
Really?
Yeah, it's called Mali. It's a country.
Right. But it's not as big as it was then.
It's pretty big. Look it up on a. Basically, they had everything that's shown on the map, if you can find a map of Mali, down to the sea and left to the sea, because you've got Somalia in the middle, right, between the sea and Mali. Mali's still quite a large country. It's about the size of Texas.
Okay.
You remember I said that it was...
Size of 2.
Yes. Yeah. At its peak, it was the size of 2 Texases, and now it's the size of 1 Texas.
But it doesn't have the influence it had then.
No, it doesn't. It's... Well, it's an odd thing. I buy stuff from Mali quite often.
Really?
Because I buy what you call it, domain names.
Oh yeah, okay.
So they're a poor country now, but one thing they do to hopefully make some money, and I'll just use it. You can have a .ml domain for nothing.
Really?
Yeah. At least for a year. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to renew it, it's something stupidly cheap, like $6 or something.
Right.
But what I found is that if you wait till it actually runs out and wait like 5 minutes, you can have another year's worth if you re-sign up. So well, I don't really know. It's a landlocked country. It's not a place you can go to easily on a
as a tourist.
You know, you can't go on a ship, can you?
Yeah.
But basically, they lost their roots to the sea when Ghana and Nigeria and all those guys eventually got their independence and started selling people from Mali to English and American slave ships. So quite a lot of your listeners may possibly be heirs to this civilization.
Huh.
Well, true, isn't it? Well possible. Well, I haven't got much more to chuck in the pot on this tale unless you've got... Well, I've got lots of stuff, but
Well,
I'm not sure how to make it into a story.
It's interesting how it just kind of got left out of our history. You know, you still have that Columbus discovered America myth, which more and more shows to be not the case.
Well, it's certainly not the case now. I mean, mainstream has stopped calling the Newfoundland Vikings bullshit, and now I've made it a national mini park. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the times are changing, but I'm not sure how you get black people, as in black people, by random in the middle of the Hopi Reserve.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there's always that story about the Egyptian artifacts found in the Grand Canyon, whether that's true or not.
I've had a long conversation with oh god, mind shot. Well, I've not been well, Seriah, so I'm a bit muzzy. Jerry Wells.
Oh, right. I've had Jerry on.
And he went down, belayed down on ropes into, quote, an Egyptian temple.
In the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Really?
With Scott Walter.
Huh. Does he have that stuff like out anywhere? Did they videotape it?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Scott was with him.
Huh.
I think it was to do a series, and they would like helicopter into places and, you know, have a look at things and strange things.
You know, I know they closed off that part of the Grand Canyon shortly after that, and there's all the Egyptian names for all the places up that way.
Yeah, well, they were all frightened that people, people belaying over the edge is like not very safe. Apparently, the rock's very friable. You know, it's not safe at all. But he said it was very Egyptian.
Huh.
Whatever that means. I don't know, but they're two very interesting characters.
Yes.
Yeah. The other people that are known to have gone there, it would appear, that you don't hear about in the English press, is the Chinese turning up there.
Oh, yeah, on the West Coast, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it practically seems like everybody and his brother's been there.
Exactly. Again, going back to David Hatcher Childress, I remember him saying he was standing in a museum in Mexico, and he said if he didn't know where he was, he would have sworn he was in China looking at the artwork.
Well.
So, I mean, there was definitely trade between Central America and China across the Pacific.
That's a fair hike back, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, maybe it was a one-way.
No, well, the Chinese are pretty canny, because you could use the rotational current, in the Pacific, if you knew it was there.
True.
The Chinese are pretty clever. They probably did know it was there.
And the Muslims also saved all those ancient maps that, like, Charles Hapgood found and stuff. Those were all still existed because the Muslims saved all this stuff.
Yeah. If the Muslims hadn't saved all of the Greek mathematician stuff, Homer's poetry, all of that stuff, Galen's medical stuff, then the Renaissance wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to Toledo, they will tell you that the Renaissance started when they invited the Christians, which is not very logical if you think about it. These are Muslims. Invited the Christians in, yeah? And I don't think they made a charge. I mean, I'm sure the town did quite well out of people staying there. But all of that was taken back up there, read by the famous physicists and things, rewritten, changed the name on it, didn't get away with it, had to change it back after a while, yeah, because other people had read the stuff. But nevertheless, the Renaissance is basically introduce all of the Greek technology, yeah, to Britain as it was, and because we had better processes now and better industrial systems, it just took off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's quite interesting. So it would appear that these guys turned up, by the way, after the Vikings.
Yeah.
And after the Chinese.
Yeah. I was going to say the Chinese and Vikings seem to be the ones we have the most evidence of earliest.
Yeah, but when you've got things like Christopher Columbus's log putting black traders into the Caribbean on his first visit, yeah?
Yeah.
First visit, black people. I mean, why make it up? Why make it up? Yeah, I mean, I can't see why anybody would make that up. I mean, when the thing of Alexandria, the library burnt, and everybody had to rely on the other ones, on the backed up copies.
Right.
In Persia, in particular, they their scholars looked at all the stuff that the Greeks had done and written down, yeah, and they've gone through it and they've gone, well, that's rubbish. I'll do an experiment because I don't think that's right, and they find an experiment, and then they changed it. Yeah, so they're the right answer. Well, I mean, the Greeks had very strange ideas like hysteria, wandering womb. That the womb was an independent animal that moved around, and if it was hot, it would move to somewhere cooler, and if it was cold, it would go somewhere warmer within the body.
Huh.
With zero evidence.
Yeah, that's weird. I've never heard that.
Well, that's what it means, wandering womb.
Ah.
It's nonsense. The Muslims did great stuff. I mean, most of the modern chemistry we know about, I mean, they took what the Greeks knew, and the Greeks got a lot of it wrong, and they worked on it for another, 600-700 years, yeah, before the Brits got hold of it, yeah, which they were allowed to do. And, I mean, they made a lot of progress in that time.
All right. Well, that seems like a good spot to end. Is there anything you want to promote that you're doing?
Well, I mean, I shut down deprogrammed radio at the new year. I was surprised how many people got upset about that. I mean, except it upset in a sad way. That's gone, and I've been building instruments and parts for instruments, and I've kind of invented a new sort of guitar pickup, but I haven't really I've got a website, but it's nothing much on it yet. So watch out if you're making your own guitars or cigar box guitars or anything like that. I'm going to have a shop open in about 2 weeks. It's just that at the moment there's not much to see because I'm loading it. It is guitar-electric-supplies.co.uk.
All right, cool.
But I'll be shipping. There is some stuff to see on there. I can ship any of this stuff worldwide at whatever the shipping cost happens to be. I mean, I can't calculate for where I don't know someone's going to buy it from, but if anybody wants to buy it from abroad, it's not a problem. I'll just have to quote them the shipping, yeah?
Right. All right. Well, thank you for coming on and talking about this. This was a really interesting piece of history I knew nothing about.
Well, it's been around. I mean, one day I might be able to do you one on Great Zimbabwe.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's another one which is kind of south of the Egypt one, and they have they have amazing ancient buildings. They think this is where, what's her name? Who's the woman that got Solomon in trouble?
Oh, I don't remember.
Beersheba.
Ah, yes.
Where she came from.
Oh, okay.
And there's a joke that, well, probably won't impress anybody in America, but there was a woman I used to see, and she was from Zimbabwe, modern Zimbabwe, and of course it used to be British. It used to be Rhodesia, yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, and I said, well, what do you make of it? All these changes and, you know, nasty government they got in at the moment, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And she said, well, all I can say is, when I was a kid, I got taken to be shown the ruins of Zimbabwe. But these days I take my kids to Salisbury and show them the ruins of Salisbury, which is the capital. So, I mean, it's such a shame what's happened to that place. It's diabolical. But it's great historical stuff, high-tech stuff for the time used to come out of there into the West, you know, and as the Brits took over Egypt, they heard stories and more stories, you know, and you've heard of King Solomon's mines.
Yeah.
People went off searching for King Solomon's mines and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that was the capital city of Zimbabwe they were looking for and eventually found.
Okay.
And the West knew nothing about it until Victorian times.
That definitely sounds like an interesting show.
Yeah. There was yet another big empire there, which was in Ethiopia.
Right.
But that again for another show. But there's interesting stuff if you just go looking. I mean, I have no idea what's in the Australian myth, for example.
Yeah.
And so on. There's a lot to be discovered, and unfortunately, most people think, well, If it's nothing to do with my ancestors, why should I bother?
That is very true. All right. Well, we're out of time.
Okay,
Thank you again, John.
Okay. You're welcome.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. It's because of you this show is able to exist. And I want to give a special shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Super Inframan, Allison Cook, Eric Hervin, John Blackburn, Ken Hunt, Chris Cordner, Dan Eckert, Tim, Jim and Sophie, Beverly Williamson, Joel Thomas Runyon, Empty K, Nagatha Christie, Patricia W., Frank Earl, Barbara Fisher, Will Powell, Big Boy Limina, Craig Parmenter, Walker, Joanna Rojas, Maddie, David Moore, Vincent Treewell, Stone Wilderness, Luke Osborne, Becky Trainer, Rob Drummond, Alex Whitcomb, Edu Camelhort, Tactical Therapist, Janet Bunderson, 36 Dingo, Taylor, Sam Sharon, Jennifer Campbell, American Rambler, Kevin, Chris Ernst, Andy McNamara, Sedger, Dominic O'Malley, Riker and Stark, J. Otto Bullitt, Jose A., Charles Davis, Roger Gonzalez, Craig Cicernos, Ray Benedetto, Linz Jackson K., Alfred Tuttle, Kevin Schreck, Patricia Giaquinta, William Lovelace, Mark Brady, Ad Noctum, Carla Mahoney, and James Lattimore. Thank you all so very much. Along with John's guitar work, the guitar boxes and parts that he's selling, he also designs websites, and he is actually responsible for the Where Did the Road Go website, as well as the Last Exit for the Lost website. He got those started for me and set everything up. He's a genius when it comes to web design. So if you need any web work done, talk to John. He's really, really good at it. All right. On a sad note, for anyone who hasn't heard, Jeff Ritzman passed away last week, I believe on Thursday. I'm going to be putting up a compilation of all of Jeff's pieces and talking a little more about that this coming week. I considered Jeff a good friend, and it was kind of a shock. He wasn't very old at all. I think he was only in his 50s. So, yeah, I'm going to take all of his appearances on Where Did the Road Go, and I'm just going to put them up as one big mega thing in tribute to him, because there's a lot of valuable information there. His insight, his intellect was just stunning when it came to this paranormal stuff. And if you've missed it, you really need to hear it. And I'm going to miss him a lot. See you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.